I wanted to give my bit on open source, and it's in regards to, I think there's a confusion as to open source equals free software, and that's not necessarily true. It's actually not true by definition. It is true in the results that there are many open source applications that happen to be free, but open source does not mean free. Open source is designed to encourage development. So let's, like OS X, many parts of OS X are open source. The kernel, which is based on freeBSD, open source. Now, Apple then takes that, what is open source, at least for them, builds upon it, makes it their own, and then allows parts that they've created on top of their kernel to be open source to encourage development for them. I mean, as a matter of fact, I'm an ADC to Select member, and I can tell you there's just tons of things that are open source. They encourage development. It's just, it baffles me how, and maybe I'm misunderstanding everything that I'm seeing in the videos, but open source does not equal free. And I'll give a scenario like I did in a comment. I'm a programmer. I can choose to program a program and give it out for free. And I don't let anybody see the code. I lock my code, nobody can have my code. Or I could open my code and give it out for free, or open my code and choose to charge for it, and basically make legal restrictions on, well, yes, my code is open, but you can't necessarily replicate this and this and this, which gives some sort of uniqueness to my own product anyway. Now, while a lot of times open source is free at the retail level, doesn't necessarily mean it's free at the business level. There are a lot of business agreements where open source code has encouraged development, and then business transactions have been made upon that because someone's going to say, well, I'm going to use this and I'm actually going to remarket it with my own name, and that constitutes a breach of the original just develop it and we'll see what happens kind of idea to an actual payment happening. It doesn't necessarily mean it's no longer open source, but it's definitely in a lot of cases breached the license agreement and saying, well, if you are going to resell our open source such and such, whatever stipulated, we require a licensing fee to do so. But in the first place is what is so beautiful about open source, is that the developers that did take the open source were able to go in there and see and say, yes, I can work with this. This is something that is probably going to save us 1.5 years worth of work. And if we can just incorporate this into our product, boom, we're going to have a fantastic product. And that happens a lot. So we need to, at least in my opinion, be very clear on if you're talking about people wanting everything for free and what is open source. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting things for free, in my opinion. I will disagree that free products don't necessarily have the same sort of incentive to improve. I do know that usually what happens in an open source community, and this was what I had said was an issue that I think with Linux, is that open source causes these replications to happen with small variations, and then nobody really takes the time to focus and consolidate efforts. And so that could be very likely a scenario. So let's say that GIMP is used, and then GIMP was based on this section of open source code, and then somebody else says, well, I'd like GIMP to change this and that, and perhaps it doesn't happen fast enough. Well, they just say, well, fine, I'll just go hire out my own set, and GIMP has a timeline of 2 years for the next revision, but we can get ours done hiring 8 programmers or whatever in 8 months. And so they do it, and they make a competitive product, and so on and so forth. It's just, I think it should just be left at open source is crucial to software development, and the encouragement of people to take something and say, look, I can either use this for my own product, or yes, you know what, I want to develop for the specific product and help them out. I just thought of an example for open source. I did an application a while back for a company who treats steel. It's their entire workflow process that I wrote this program for, and it is dependent on MySQL. That is open source. It happens to be free, but this is a business model where if you're at like an enterprise level, they will charge you a fee, and if you need support, they will charge you a fee. They are obviously making money because they have continued to exist and improved on their product. And I think MySQL is a damn good example for open source, perhaps at a retail level being free, but not necessarily free for the entire business model. And the use of the product in certain applications and where fees aren't transferred from party to party. But that is a example within my own programming, and I have used MySQL many times, so I thought I'd just put that in the vid. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching.